So hello everyone, in this video we'll be understanding about JavaScript data types. So let's understand it. So data types in JavaScript, data types basically specify what kind of data can be stored and manipulated within a program. So we have already created variables in our previous lessons. So variables can store multiple data types or different data types. For example, they can store numbers, they can store strings, booleans, all these are data types. There are 6 basic data types in JavaScript, which can be divided into 3 main categories. The one is primitive or primary, the second one is composite or reference, and special data types. String, number, boolean are primitive data types. Object, array, and function, which are all types of objects, are composite data types. Whereas undefined and null are special data types that we'll understand in a second. Primitive data types can hold only one value at a time, whereas composite data types can hold multiple values and more complex entities. Just like array, object, and functions, they can contain or they can store more values than a normal primitive data type. So you can also see everything in this graph as well, which denotes that we have data types. The first category of data types is primitive data types. The other one is non-primitive data types. The primitive data types are these one, which you can see: numbers, string, boolean, undefined, and null. And non-primitive data types are object, array, and function. The string data type. So what is a string data type? Basically, the string data type is used to represent textual data. It implies sequences of characters. Text means sequence of characters. Strings are created using single or double quotes surrounding one or more characters as shown below. So you can see we have created one variable var a, and we have assigned a value high there, which is a string value. And how do I know that? Because this string value is inside a inside a single quote. So this single quote denotes that it is a string, or you can also get the idea by this double quote as well. If you see anywhere this double quote and inside that some characters, then that is a string. Basically, this is the indication of that a string is look like this, or string look like this. You can include quotes inside the string as long as they don't match the enclosing quotes. You don't have to use the matching quotes inside or in between the text when you're writing a text. You should use opposite of that double quote. If you're using double quote outside, then you can't use double quotes inside. You have to use a single quote. And if you're using a double quote inside, then you have to use this single quote outside, because you cannot use single quote inside if you're using it outside or enclosing that by this single quote. But if you want to use them, for example, in this case, if you want to use a single quote inside a single quote, then you will be using this for backslash and then this apostrophe or this single quote again. So this way you can use this symbol again, just like in double quotes as well. You can use just like this backslash and this symbol. So basically this is how you can add a same quote if you want to use in the paragraph or in a string as well, in between the string as well. So this is how you'll use it. Then there comes number data type. The number data type is used to represent positive or negative numbers with or without decimal place, or numbers written using exponential notation. Example 1.5 e dash 4. This is actually equal to this 1.5 into 10 to the power minus 4. So this is basically the case. So this kind of notation you will see in scientific calculations or mathematics also, we can find that, but basically it is found in uh, scientific calculation mostly. So you can see the number data type is this: when you store the normal numbers, whether it be a decimal point or exponential point number, when you store them in a variable without double quotes, then it is a number data type. You can add negative values here as well. So this number which isn't having any decimal point is called integer numbers. So integer can be negative and positive as well. This 80.5, this one is actually a decimal number or a floating point number. This one is an exponential notation of a number. So this is basically equal to this one. This e means into 10 to the power, then if it is plus, then power 6 is positive, and if it is negative, then power is negative. 10 to the power negative 6. So basically it is that. Then we have a Boolean data type which stores only two values. One is true and the other one is false. So it is typically used to store values like yes or no or on or off, which has two cases like true or false cases. At that time you will be using this Boolean data type, or basically you will be creating a variable which stores a Boolean data type. For example, in this case we have created this variable is reading. So in this he has stored true, and it is true in this variable, so the value is stored true in this. And is sleeping false, we can also assign false here. So whenever I'll be checking this is sleeping variable, so I'll always be getting this value which is false. Same goes for this is reading as well. So basically it is used for if checks and some other conditional statements. When you want to conditionally render something, at that time you'll be using the variables or Boolean data types. The Boolean data type can also be grabbed or can also be stored like this. So you can see we are not storing anything in a variable now. We have created three number variables or number data types we have stored in some variables. You can see A is having 2, B is having 5, C is having 10. Now we are checking this B is greater than A or not. So this statement, this symbol which is greater than symbol, is actually a conditional operator that we are using to get the idea or to ask from the computer that whether the B variable, whatever this whatever B is having, is greater than from this A or not. So B is having 5, right? And A is having 2. So if 5 is greater than 2, then it will return true. Otherwise, it is going to return false. So you can see it is now checking that B is greater than C or not. So B is 5, C is 10. So it is certainly not greater than C because it is 10 and it is 5. So it is returning us false. So in this case also we are actually using Boolean data types. So this is also one way that when you want to actually compare your variables. So at that time you will also be using this data type, or the result will be in this data type, Boolean data type. Then we also have undefined data types. Undefined data types are assigned automatically when you don't assign any value to a variable. For example, in this case, this a variable is uninitialized, you can say. So this isn't having any value. So our program or our JavaScript program will automatically give this variable an undefined value. So if we log this out, you can see if we alert it out, you can see in here, so it will return undefined. Why is that? Because no value is given to this. So whenever a variable is uninitialized, then at that time it will be undefined, or the data type it will be carrying out is undefined. Then we have a null data type. This is another special data type that can have only one value, the null value. A null value means that there is no value. It is not equivalent to empty strings or 0. It is not equal to that. It is simply nothing. So we are actually telling a variable that you have to store nothing. So it is basically not equal to 0 or empty strings, but it is kind of a data type that we are using to denote that it contains nothing. So it is just like that. So a variable can be explicitly emptied of its current contents by assigning it the null value. So sometimes you want that. For example, if you have this variable, in this a variable, uh, the null is initialized, so it will give the value null. So basically consider it as a nothing. So it is nothing value, or it doesn't contain anything. So basically if you want a variable to empty, and if you want to store nothing in that variable, so you'll be explicitly assigning this null value. So that will suggest the program or the that anything in which you are checking whether it contains a value or not. So in that it will give the null value, which is basically nothing. So this is actually how we empty a variable while programming. So if you want to empty a variable, so we cannot uninitialize that, you know that, but we can set an empty value here. We can also set empty strings here, but null is something else than an empty string. Null is kind of a value that we have deliberately assigned that it means nothing. Then we also have an object data type which contains multiple variables, you can say. The object is a complex data type that allows you to store collections of data. So we have collections of data means we can store multiple variables. You can consider those variables are called properties, and then these are the values in this. So properties, values, properties, and the value. An object contains properties defined as a key value pair. So key and the value can also be set to like this. A property key name is always a string, but the value can be any data type like strings, numbers, booleans, or complex data types like arrays, function, and other objects. So this key should always be a string, and this value can be any data type that we have. Like it can be a string, it can be a number, boolean, or an array. We'll be understanding what is an array. It can also be a function or other object as well. So it can also contain nested objects. So that it is actually. So we'll be actually practically doing all of these things, so you don't have to worry about like we are only studying this theory. We are not doing any practical. We'll be doing the practical, but before understanding the practical we should have a basic knowledge about all these data types first. So basically that's why we are studying this actually. Then we have an array data type in which we can store multiple values. You can see in one variable, this colors variable, I can store multiple values in a square bracket. So if you want to store multiple values, just like colors are, you don't want a single colors to be stored in this as a string. You want multiple strings to be stored in this colors. So at that time, you'll be using a square bracket here, and then you will be using multiple values and storing multiple values separated by a comma. So you can also use other data types as well, not only the strings. You can also store numbers and booleans and other things as well. And for grabbing the element, for example, if you want this value from this variable, from this array variable, then you will be actually calling it like this. So you'll be using the index of that element. So index start from 0. So the index of red is 0, yellow is having the 1 index, and then 2, 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3. Total 4 elements are there, but the last index is 3 because it is starting from 0 index. And if you want any element from an array, so you can actually use the index. For example, you will be using in this case it is grabbing the red color, so it used this colors variable or this colors array variable, and after that it specified this square bracket, and inside that we can specify an index that I want this value on that particular index. So on 0 index it is having the red value, that's why it will return us the red value. So on cities 2, the second index, the first 0 1 2. So second index is this one. So 2 is having the green color, so second index is having the green color, so that's why it will return the green color. So actually it is grabbing it from cities, so we'll be going inside this, not in this. 0 1 2, so New York is the index value that it gave to us. So that's why you can grab any value at a particular index. There are also other methods that we can use on array that will be understanding deeply in array chapter when we'll be learning about arrays deeply. So that is the other task that we have to do in future. Then we also have function data types. Function data types are like this. So where then we can store then we can create a variable like this, and we can create a function or assign a function to this variable as well. You can see it is having an anonymous function. This is called anonymous function because it is not having any name, but we are assigning that to this greeting variable. Then we can call this function, this which will return hello world. And function is basically a block of code that we can write in function, and we can reuse that block of code by calling that function. Basically it is like that. So you can see it is storing this function, and then there are parentheses and then curly bracket. Then we can write any block of code here. We can write console logs, we can write anything here. Then we can assign this to this variable, and now this variable is having this function as a data type, so you can say. So we can write, and we can check the type of any variable by using this type of operator, which tells which type of data it is storing or this variable is storing. So if we specify type of, and then we give a space, and then we specify the variable name, then it will give us the data type that variable is storing. So it is storing function, so it returned us the function data type. We can also call this function by using greeting, the same name for variable or the variable name, and then after we can use or execute this function by adding this parentheses. So the type of operator can be used to find out what type of data a variable or operand contains. It can be used with or without parentheses. We can use type of with this parentheses, and inside the parentheses we can specify the variable name, or we can leave out the parentheses and we can directly specify the variable name after giving it a space. The type of operator is particularly useful in the situations when you need to process the values of different types differently, but you need to be very careful because it may produce unexpected result in some cases, as demonstrated in the following example. So you can see in this case it is checking all the values, that what type of value it is having or storing. So this 15 is a type of number. This 42.7 is also a type of number. Same goes for this. Infinity is also a type of number. Not a number is, despite being a not a number, it will return number, but it is said that it is not a number, or nan. Type of, it is a empty string, so it will return strings here. It is also a string data type. You got my point. Like if it is contained in a single or double quotes, then it is a data type of string. Same goes for this. And you can think of this as a number, but it is not a number. It is actually a string because we have used double quotes or single quotes outside of this number, so it became a string now, not a number. Similarly, when we add type of operator before true, it will return boolean to us because it is a boolean data type. So type of operator will actually return the data type of that particular value or a variable. So this is the case. Thank you for watching. Let's meet in the another one.